All the way from Orlando, Florida. Nope, it's not Mickey Mouse, it's Chris Smith, co-founder of Curator.
Hey. How are you guys? Welcome. We're going to get the panel started in a second. Before I do get started, this morning was tough for one of my employees. He's our VP of product, and he had to do my hair. So I'm going to bring out the panelists for today's podcast. We believe that, micro-targeted audio content is the future. How many of you in the last 30 days, raise your hand if you've listened to a podcast, just really quickly for me. Okay, so come on out, you guys. We have Marguerite. She didn't even want me to say her last name. She's like Madonna, Marguerite. Terry Conrad is with Conversations That Matter. We have Seth Price with The Craft of Marketing. We have Josh Dorkin from Bigger Pockets. And I didn't kind of crunch the numbers, but hundreds and hundreds of thousands of downloads of the podcast kind of represented on the stage. I asked you guys to start, how many of you have listened to one? Raise your hand if you're a podcaster. If you've created a podcast, raise your hand.
Got a couple.
Certainly not as many, but some hands that went up. So that's kind of what the topic is. Marguerite, here's what we're going to kind of keep it simple with. Talk about what your podcast is about and what the business results of starting it have been.
I started a website in March called movetotacoma.com. I've had a personal real estate blog for a long time, and I decided I wanted something more community-focused for relocators. Our market is right next to Seattle, and we're 45 minutes south. Our median price is half that amount, so it was to attract those people to Tacoma. So it's all about the local market. And I decided to just do 10 episodes just to kind of launch the website. And then all of a sudden, tons of downloads, tons of community interaction, people really excited about it, people telling me they were looking forward to the next episode, and I got totally hooked.
Yeah. And what was the barrier to entry to start? Like, did you just have a microphone? Did you buy a microphone? Like, what did you do?
So I Googled it and found all these great guides for getting started and to buy the fancy microphone and stuff. And then in the end, I was a little overwhelmed, so I just found a guy that records bands in his garage.
So give us an idea of a specific episode that got the most downloads for you as an agent.
Commute hacks with Justin Camarada, how to get to Seattle without losing your mind.
That was popular?
Yeah, it was.
Cool. So it's not necessarily a podcast about your new listing.
No, I never talk about real estate.
Sure. And what is a podcast that you love? One of the things we wanted to keep in mind is that most of you, no matter what we say, will never podcast. Is that fair? I do think that. So we also wanted to recommend some podcasts. I think that podcasting and listening to podcasts is the best learning space right now. The best bloggers are now all the best podcasters. Seth, you could back that up. Josh, we're going to talk about your transition from being a big popular written blog to an audio blog. Sure. So, Marguerite, what is a podcast that you would recommend the people here listen to that would help grow their business versus if they are not going to be a podcaster?
Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn.
And what are you learning what are you learning when you listen to that? What is like the specific, purpose of that show?
I mean, there's not a ickier space on the internet than making money online.
Yeah.
And he is the coolest, nicest guy. He interviews everybody. He interviews people making $20,000 a month selling $2 Amazon books, and you learn all their goodies. You learn how to make a course, things that you can actually apply to real estate. If you have a real estate blog, if you're a real estate marketer, there's so much that applies, but in a really unique way.
I agree. Cool. So Smart Passive Income, Pat Flynn. I would write that down. Seth, I'm going to toss it to you.
Yep.
Your podcast, The Craft of Marketing. Tell people a couple of the recent accolades, and then talk about your kind of philosophy on podcasting, what the takeaways for the crowd would be.
So I run a sales and marketing team for a tech company called Playster, and one of the challenges of being in the trenches like you guys are is that I don't always get to learn. I have to go to conferences to learn. So the podcast for me is three things. It's learning. I pick the smartest people in the marketing space, and they give me an hour of their time.
Name two of them.
Let's say Robert Rose or the VP of marketing at HubSpot, a company you may know of. They give me an hour of their time. I ask them any question I want, and they answer it. So normally, I would have to pay them for consulting. So a couple things happen. One, I build my sort of social influence because I'm now associated with folks that are on possibly another level. And two, I learn an enormous amount that I can then share with my audience. I'm creating content, I'm meeting fantastic folks that I now have a relationship with, and then I'm building an audience with other folks where I can share that.
Cool. And one thing I would write down is sometimes you learn more than you earn with marketing.
Without a doubt.
I think that if one thing for me as a blogger, podcaster, YouTube videos, I've tried everything. And I have to be honest, like what you learn about the topic that you're podcasting about, it doesn't go away. It becomes part of your expertise as a human being forever. And you can't really, with a podcast, I know an hour format or 30 minutes, there's a lot of prep that goes into it.
Yeah,
You do a
without a
lot of
doubt.
post-production
Yes.
with your podcast as well. So I'm gonna throw it to you, Josh. Josh's podcast is Bigger Pockets. Bigger Pockets is for investors, people that wanna learn about real estate investing. They get 60,000 downloads per episode. So there's a lot of people listening. But before that, you were already getting millions of page views on your blog. What I want you to talk to the audience about is if you're a company here today, should you start thinking about podcasting versus writing? What's the difference been for your company between being a blogger and being a broadcaster, if you will?
Perfect. So, anybody can hide behind the written word. It's really easy to do that. But once you get behind a microphone, you're exposed.
Yes.
You're naked. People can hear your feelings, they can hear your intonation, they can hear what you're thinking. And so by getting out there and emoting through the microphone, you're creating this personal connection with your listeners. And there's...
Well, let's poll the audience really quickly.
Sure.
How many of you, raise your hand if you feel like you're a better talker than a writer? Raise your hand. My hand's way up.
Yeah.
I think this industry is primed with a lot of talkers. I don't know that there's a lot of writers in the real estate industry. So I think it's a good format for that, to your point.
Yeah, so it's really easy to get out there to just open up and start talking. And whether you're a company who's going to become the expert in your space by talking about whatever it is that your company does, or if you're an agent who's going to do what Marguerite does and become the owner of that community, talk about the community, not necessarily this house is for sale, but this is our community. You become that person, that personality for your community. People love you, they have this connection. They listen in the shower. They listen while they're jogging. They listen on their commute. They walk
I listened to Terry in the shower this
I listen to Seth in the shower. It's weird.
and so you connect with people, right? I mean, there's nothing deeper than that. So it's amazing.
Yeah, and people can't drive around and read your blog. They'll crash, right? How many of you are listening to audio in the car that's not FM AM, right? I mean, I think there's a big opportunity here, and there's a stat where 90% of cars being produced today or forward are podcast enabled, MP3 enabled, things of that nature. Good stuff. So there's almost like a fame bump that you guys have seen a little bit yourself as well. Not just necessarily because you're a podcaster, but man, you've had the VP of this and the CMO of this, and all of a sudden it's also a little bit of growth hacking. You bring on a guest who's got their own tribe, and now they're going to want to email out their great interview that you did with them. Obviously, if it's good, that's helpful.
If you can make the people that you are associating with look good, like don't let them off the hook, but make them look good, make them shine. So I make sure I have great images of them. I write a really detailed post to highlight the insight that they've been able to share, and then I make sure that I share it. One that's super important for them because building our brands personally and professionally allow us to connect to the customers that we're hoping to get. And
exactly.
This is a fast track to doing that.
Yeah, I think I was talking with Ben Kinney of Active Rain. I was talking with Brad Inman of Inman News. Like, I would almost bet my career that within 24 months, all of these organizations, 1,000 Watt, all the people that you love that are providing great content are going to be blogging. Inman Select Audio, I think, has already been something that Inman News has been playing with. I'm going to throw it to you, Terry. How are you?
I'm great.
Good. You look great.
Thanks.
So I'm going to start with the other question. What is a podcast that people here have probably not heard of that they should check out?
So yeah, Conversations That Matter is me. And the reason I've been left to last is because I'm not at this huge epic height of fame that these
So you're
people
basically
are.
saying that your podcast is the one no one's heard of.
That's the one that
I thought my podcast was the one no one heard of.
So, but what's interesting is you have a background in professional journalism.
Yep.
And obviously, if you wanted to be on TV or you wanted to be on the radio, like there were only so many stations on the dial. Talk a little bit about, for you, you've called your podcasting a passion project. What does that mean?
So yeah, so I went to school actually for radio and got my diploma in technology there, and it's always been something that I love. And he talked about, we're talkers, and it's called Conversations That Matter because I love digging into juicy conversations. And I've actually had Seth on the show, and we've talked about market. We share a passion for marketing and branding, and so these are things that I love to dig into, life and business. And honestly, for me, I'm having a conversation with my guest, and it's very intimate. And if 2 people listen, that's okay. And if 100 people listen, that's great. But ultimately, I like to do what Seth does, which is shine the light on somebody else and really take a curious approach and really try to draw out of them as much as I possibly can.
So you have to be excited about it to basically do it.
Absolutely.
And then you're not necessarily concerned with 60,000 downloads or 6.
No.
For you, it's actually something that is exciting for you the same way a hobby would be exciting.
I mean, I could have spent time really targeting, making it a bigger deal and really launching strong and making sure I was getting the traffic and creating sponsorship opportunities. But I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep it passionate for me. I wanted to keep it less work, frankly.
Yep. Yeah.
I didn't want to suck the fun out of it, so I kept it kind of simple.
Sure. And I would say that if you are going to start podcasting or blogging or any micro marketing, money and numbers are going to follow. They're not going to lead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you're starting the podcast for ad revenue, it probably will never end up, being.
Let me say something about that. I think there's a misconception when we create content that we need to broadcast it to everyone, but we're in the age of narrowcasting. There are probably 1,000 people in your market that matter to your business. Those are the only people that you need as listeners or readers to your blog. You don't need everyone in your state or everyone in the US. And that's what this sort of niche channel marketing is all about. There is no other medium where someone will spend an hour listening to the timbre of your voice.
In the shower.
In the shower, in the car, doing whatever they do, running, whatever it is. I didn't think about that. I'm going to block that out of my mind. But there's no other medium where you can do that. We multitask with everything else. You cannot read, you cannot watch videos while you're driving or running.
Yeah.
This is the thing you can do and create that deep.
Yeah, and actually I wanted to recommend, I was asking everyone, and I'll still come back to, Josh, what is a podcast people should listen to? But here's the other opportunity, I think. Is anybody here a fan of the podcast Startup? Raise your hand if you've listened to it. And for those of you that are a fan, can you name the advertisers? Because I can. Ford Motor Company. MailChimp.
Yes.
Betterment. And so my co-founder, Jimmy, who couldn't be here, he actually ended up buying like a very nice engagement ring through a Pandora ad that was hyper-local that he kept hearing. So I just want the people in the room that like to buy leads and that like to pay to get their brand in front of people in new and creative ways. I would find the most popular podcast in my market and ask if I could be their sponsor. I would actually go to Pandora and do micro, hyper-targeted ads in my little area only, and it sticks with you. Why is that? Why do you guys think, Terry, why do you think that you can name the ads in a podcast, but you might not be able to name the ads on a blog?
I think, well, there's science behind
the audio,
auditory for sure. And it's also, I think, because you tend to be more absorbed, I think, when you're hearing it than when you're just reading something.
Yeah. So Startup, please write that down, you guys. If you're in this room, you are going to love that podcast. It's about what it really takes to start a business. He pitches investors. I want to recommend actually one specific episode that everybody in this room should listen to, which is on the Tim Ferriss experiment. It's an episode where he interviewed an angel investor named Chris Sacca. I think that one episode, 90 minutes, will change a lot of people's lives in this room. Marguerite?
I know there's probably still a lot of company owners in the room, and not just agents, people who maybe service the industry. I've tried to talk to my state association about hosting a podcast. Why is there no one hosting the conversation in my state about real estate, interviewing all the successful agents, interviewing the people that are really making a difference?
So maybe at the car level, FAR level, there should be some content for agents?
Man, I think we're so hungry for it. Yeah. And then, I mean, and the Realtor Association in particular is having a hard time like staying relevant at the local level. I think that I'd love it if they take me up on that suggestion. Well, and then if not, my owner's in the room, and I think we should be, if you're recruiting, we should be attracting by hosting the conversation about real estate.
Well, I wanted to give everybody also an actionable item. Like, if you're willing to try audio content there's something that we like to call an MVP.
Yeah.
You know, what is that minimum viable product? Like, how can I podcast today and share it today without any excuses? And I would recommend SoundCloud. If you guys have never tried SoundCloud, you know, the excuse is now gone. You can download it, go in your hotel room, plug in your earbuds, and the quality is going to be pretty good. And so if you have a specific thing that you just want to get out there, try it, you guys. Record an audio thing on SoundCloud. Share it on Facebook and say, hey, I just recorded this. Tell me what you guys think. And it's amazing that kind of, it'll be a micro version of people saying, oh, Josh, it's you, or hey, Seth, I love you, but it'll happen. What are you going to add, Josh?
So I just wanted to add, a lot of people are going to look at this and say, well, what's the immediate impact? What's the immediate ROI? You cannot go into this thing thinking, what is the immediate ROI? Because you're going to walk away disappointed. You've got to get into it for the long game. And the long game is building your brand. The long game is getting that recognition in your community. If you're an agent or as an industry leader, as a company, it's to build your brand within the industry. If you stick with that and stay with your show, it's going to grow.
Yeah.
These marketplaces, whether it's SoundCloud or iTunes or YouTube, they're there. There's people that are just dying to get this information. And if you put it out there...
Yeah, they'll buy from you. And I'll back that up with some hard numbers. 35% of our leads at Curator come from our podcast. We're a startup. We're at about $4 million in revenue a year, which we're really proud of. $1.5 million of that recurring revenue is from our show.
Yeah.
So this isn't just like my little, sorry, Terry, this isn't just my passion project. I want to make money. If that's okay with everybody.
Actually, yeah, no.
Yeah.
Once you've showered-
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I want to make money too. Let's be
Sure.
clear.
Okay.
This is not a charity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm building my brand and I'm establishing trust. And like you were saying, Josh, that it's really about an intimate audience that I'm curating, and those are my clients that I'm doing business with. So I am out to make money too, just not at large scale.
Yeah.
And I wanted to stay true to my brand, which is let's keep it real, let's keep it deep, and less tech and tool and less hype and you know, that sort of thing. So I just wanted to keep it very focused on keeping it real and still wanting to drive people to my business, obviously.
Sure.
I've got a takeaway. One of the things that people can get caught up on is it's not just podcasting. It's about creating something, I call it serialized content. Content that you put out on a regular basis targeted to a particular audience. You do not stop. You're not going to get rewards from a blog in 6 months or a year, but if you commit to providing real value, answering the questions that your customers ask, or providing some sort of entertainment, you're going to build traffic on that site. The podcast is the same way. You could do it with an email list. It doesn't matter the medium. It matters about the consistency and the message in the audience.
Agreed. And if you have an iPhone, go to iTunes, download the podcasts that we're recommending, subscribe to them. If you have an Android device, go to the Apple Store. Or you can download Stitcher. Thank you guys so much. We hope you enjoyed the panel. Thank you guys.
Awesome.